that song, The Truth Be Told. And Sue overheard me, and she said, we're going to sing that song this morning. And we were going to sing it first, and I asked her if she would please flip the order. Because this really sets up our conversation for this morning. However, I have two dilemmas, and I want to share with you, and perhaps you can help me. First of all, I want to clarify one of the comments that I made, that section at the end about birth order. I find it so fascinating. I love sharing that. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to do it justice. And so I just want to clarify a couple of points. Still not going to do it justice, but I just want to clarify a couple of things for you to consider. One, remember I talked about birth order and, you know, the 1, 2, 3, and that child has a connection with the parent in that birth order or whatever the task is. I want to share that there are two sides to one coin. The one side is I'm really, really close to my mother, or my father. In my case, it's my mother. I'm the number 2 child, or I'm at war with that number 2 child. And my number 2 child, I was busy trying to beat myself out of him. And so the things that I didn't like about myself, I was really at war with him about that. We're close now, and I've done many, many mea culpas, and we're close now. But, you know, that struggle was real. And so there's this coin. So you could be, you know, well, that's not true for me because I really fought and I resisted my parent, and I didn't want to be anything like them. In fact, I tried very hard not to be like them. That's one side of the coin, but the other side of the coin, you could be very much like them. And I also don't have time to unpack it all, but what about blended families? In blended families, remember I said the first 7 years of life is when our character is pretty set and we learn how to do relationships. And so it depends. If you're a blended family, when other children came into the mix, where were you during that first 7-year period? And so maybe the children from the other family, there was a number 1, and now we got 2 number 1s there. But it really does depend on where you fit in terms of those first 7 years, and of course how you were treated. So if the other number 1 came in and took over that spot, again, there are some dynamics there that need to be considered. What about an only child or twins? So what happens with that is it doesn't matter the gender of that only child, what that only child will do. Remember, systems are living entities, so to speak. And so that only child may identify with mother at some point, and you know things are going along, and they flip and they may identify with father. So there is some fluidity in that role. And likewise, I'm always curious when I talk to twins and I ask them, well, are you the oldest or the youngest? And again, that kind of gives me an idea. Okay, so the older twin, they typically act like an older child, right? I'm the older one of the two. I got it going on. I came out first. And so they may lord it over the other twin, you know, as being the number 1, or they may be treated like, well, you're the firstborn. And so there are a lot of extenuating dynamics here that I could not unpack last night. And so I just wanted to put that out there. But I just find that so fascinating. And when I share that, I see lights go on in the audience. And some people, well, nah, that's not true in my case. And I would just ask you to consider. Remember, my premise is that there's so many nuances to who we are. And only God can unpack this mess. He's the only one that can do that. And so that's the point of that. And then my second dilemma is, I feel like a fire person. My second son is a fireman, and I feel like a fireman bringing a hose to a fight and asking you to drink from that fire hose, right? There's so much that I am scheduled to share. And I want to be sensitive to where you are. We didn't have time for questions last night, and I eat breakfast at 7, so I promise you we'll be finished at 10 because I'm ready to eat. And so I don't know how much time we'll have. And so I want to be sensitive to, giving you, asking questions because, people come up individually and ask me questions, but I'm assuming that if one person has that question, other people may as well. And so I want to be sensitive to that. So this talk I'm doing today, this just now, critical talk, the talk I'm doing on trauma, important, but I can direct you to some places to get that information. And the talk I'm doing in the morning about community, critical. And so I might skip through trauma and leave more time to ask, give you opportunity to ask questions. So is that okay with you? I know it feels like you're drinking from a fire hose. It's just so much information. When we talk about shame, critical, this is vital. Last night I said that shame, we all struggle with some degree of shame. And the reason I can say that so comfortably is because of the genesis of shame. And so I'm going to have you take you back to eternity past. Yes, I am, and I'm going to turn this on so it can work. You know what I mean? Okay. All right. Oh, okay. There you go. Okay. Did I go back? Okay. Yeah, I didn't go back. Okay. There you go. This is the beginning. In eternity past, the Godhead had this thing going on. They were in love, and the very nature of love is creation. There's a creative element. And so they had this community. It was a time of love and peace and selflessness. And they were just having this experience. And this is in eternity past. And so I can't say, when, how all of this happened, but it did. And in that community, they decided that they wanted to create. And so they created the other unfallen planets and the other unfallen beings. And then, again, so now they're a part of this community. I'm setting you up for tomorrow. There's this community that's formed, right? And so they're a part of that. And then it's still, again, the nature of creation, the nature of love is creation. And so I don't know if you've ever thought about, of all the combinations that the Godhead could have come up with in terms of creation, we know no snowflake is alike and no leaves are alike, but they settled on creating humanity to reflect them and giving us the power of choice. That was in eternity past, they set that up. Eternity past, they said, we're going to create humanity, and we're going to give them the power to choose, which means they have the power to accept or not. But remember, love conquers all. I said that last night. I will say that throughout my talk. Very important place to be. And so humanity is now part of this community, and there's this love and this peace and selflessness, and there is nothing but just a grand community. And then sin entered the picture. By the way, we know sin entered the picture in heaven, right? Okay. There you go. Sin entered the picture in heaven. And I'm not sure what that looked like. When I study scripture, I try to put myself in a storyline, and I try to imagine the experience, not just reading, because God's working in my present. I'm trying to make his word. I want to hear from him in my present. And so when I look at these stories, I want to understand it in the context of where I am. And so when the Bible says at the end of creation, the end of chapter 2, it says that Adam and Eve were naked and unashamed. That's what the word says. They were naked and unashamed. Why unashamed? Why didn't he say they were naked and happy? They were naked and joyful. But the writer says they were naked and unashamed, and I think there's a reason why that word was used. Then sin entered the picture. And when sin entered the picture, there was a rupture of this community. And in that rupture of community, what sin did was it released into the community shame. It released into the community judging. It released into the community the victimizer cycle. What do I mean by that? So back to shame. Remember, let's follow Eve. Eve is at the tree. And now, the enemy says, now God is, we don't know how long, we don't know if it happened a week after creation or when it happened, but she's at this tree. She's had an experience of God. She's had an experience of community. And so when I unpack what shame does, I want you to think about what happened with Eve. So she's standing at this tree, and the enemy says, hey, God said he loves you all like that, but he's withholding something from you. And I wonder what happened inside of her when he said that. I wonder, and I believe this happened, there was an emotional shift that took place when she believed she began entertaining the lie. And well, maybe he is withholding something. Maybe I'm not good enough as I am, and so maybe the fruit will help me to achieve this exalted state and be like God, which is what the enemy said, what the enemy said. She partakes of the fruit. She then gives it to Adam, and Adam partakes of the fruit. And then as a result of that, shame is released into the world. How we know? They hid and they began, they sewed fig leaves together. We've been hiding ever since. So we can say, I'm fine, yes, I'm fine, but we really are not. Judging, let's talk about what happened. So God came, remember, God is pursuing us. The truth is that one song they sang, I love that song about he stays, he can't help it. This is not something that I have a choice, he had a choice. He can't help it. The nature of who the Godhead is, they cannot leave us. They cannot. I don't care what your feelings say, they cannot leave us. So he comes to them in pursuit of them. Where are you? That, we read that. That's not just like, where are you? Where are you located, in the northeast part of the garden or the northwest? Where are you? That wasn't the point of the question. The point of the question was, what's happening? Do you realize what has happened? That's really the point of the question. Do you realize that something's happened? And then the judging starts. Eve says, the snake you made, he messed me up. That's the victimization too. She felt victimized, and she was, but then she judged God as being unfair to make the snake who could talk. And then when Adam responds, Adam says, the woman you gave me, the one you made especially for me, you messed up, God. The woman you gave me, she gave me this fruit and I partook of it. See how you messed up, God? He judged God as being unfaithful, unfair. Something's wrong with what you did. So the judgment of what Adam and Eve felt, they judged God for being unfair. And now the truth is that Eve was victimized by Satan. She turns around and victimizes Adam, and Adam turns around and throws her under the bus, victimizes her. That's the nature of the victimization. And so if you feel victimized, if you feel helpless, I promise you, you are doing that in some arena of relationships with somebody else. It may not look like, so my husband abused me, he beat me up, and so I would never do what he did. The nature of sin suggests that otherwise. You would, because you have been victimized. You see no other option, oh, so the sister's not going to speak to me at church today because she got on a new dress, I'm not going to speak to her. You're victimizing her. You may not be victimizing her like your husband victimized you. Let me tell you a real quick story. I worked with a woman. When I was at Weimar, I worked with this woman who had a wealthy daughter, was, a do-gooder, and she wanted to help prostitutes in her town. And she would go out at night and tell them there's a way out. And one of the pimps learned about her, and he kidnapped her and raped her. And so she comes home all broken, in despair. This mother is furious. I mean, absolutely furious. Now remember, the nature of sin is about judging and shaming and all of that, right? Those components I talked about. So I'm talking to her, and she's definitely not going to forgive this man. And she's throwing all these judgments about him. He's a creep, he's blah, blah, blah. And she's just listing them. And I'm cringing because, remember, judge not, lest you be judged. I'm thinking, you're giving me a picture of your heart, telling me how you judge this man. And when I said that to her in some nice way, I try to be nice, and she was furious. She got up and left. She left the session, went to her room, didn't come back out, cried all night. And before she left, though, I said, I know that sounds harsh, but this sounds harsh, but the Bible does not lie. As you judge, you're going to be judged back. Oh, I would never do that to my daughter, ever, ever, ever. He victimized my daughter. I would never do that to her. Well, the next morning, as she came back to our morning group, she had been up all night crying, and the Lord shared with her that she indeed had victimized her daughter. How did she do that? She controlled her daughter. She told her what to eat, when to eat, what to wear, and all of those things. She indeed had victimized her daughter the same way this guy had done. And so now she is faced with her own heart. We're not talking about intent, we're talking about impact. Okay? And so she had done the same thing. That's the nature of victimization. We get victimized, we're going to victimize somebody else. We judge, and we also get judged. We shame, we feel shame, we also shame someone else. You with me so far? Okay. Okay. And I said last night, shame is the foundational survival thing that we do. It's just, I feel this awful feeling in addition to the other things that I do to stay out of that garbage can, to keep my heart on lockdown. I learned to be a martyr. You say to me, boy, you lived through a really tough situation. Yes, I know. And we become this noble martyr, or we become codependent as the day is long. Right? You know what that word means. We have difficulty saying no. We put others above ourselves to the neglect of ourselves, and we don't know where we begin and where we end, and we just take all this stuff in. Perfectionism. I don't know if we have any perfectionist people here. But you find, yes, you find, yeah, okay. And these are the things that I do to survive life, right? But the foundation is shame. I'm not getting any help. Okay, let me define shame for you. Shame is this, it's really challenging and elusive. So people use words for shame like humiliation. I felt so embarrassed or humiliated, and I feel indignant and I feel disgraced. Those are words we use to define shame. When you ask people, how'd you feel? You ever felt like you want the ground to open up and you want to just fall in the ground? Yeah, just have the ground open up and you fall down. Those are words we use to really describe shame. But if we don't name it, that's the very nature. It helps for shame to hide. It becomes very elusive to pull it out, which is where it needs to be out in daylight. And so let me, okay. Yeah. Okay. But the truth is, words do no justice to the feeling of shame. It does no justice to it. It's a common, we all share it. We've all had some shameful experience that happens to us, and we feel that shame. Okay. The real message is shame. I am not enough. I'm just, there's this chasm that exists between me and the rest of the world, and I'm never going to measure up. No matter how hard I try, no matter how hard I work to look like I got it all together, because I'm fine, yes, I'm fine, and all of that. But there's this chasm that exists, and I'm never going to reach over that chasm. I'm not enough is the message that shame gives us. And there's something wrong with me. I just don't measure up. There's something wrong with me. This is the other point. So something happens, I get in a situation, I am now experiencing shame. There's this emotional shift that has happened inside of me. I feel this shame, and I cannot tolerate this moment that I'm feeling right now, because I want the ground to open up, number one. I can't tolerate the feelings of shame, and then I feel ashamed because I feel shame. And so let me tell you how you all did that last night. You didn't follow my instructions. You start thinking about your children, and you think about how you messed up your children. Didn't you? Yeah, this is what I did. And then you felt shame because you messed up your kids. You didn't even feel shame about your experience. You felt shame about what you did to your kids, right? And so that's the nature of shame. It feels so bad, and then I can't tolerate this moment. And when I think about I can't tolerate this moment, and I should be able to, and then I feel shame because I can't tolerate the moment. And so the very nature of it is this self-perpetuating loop. Now, I'm going to tell you about what happened. This last statement is it causes me to hide, and I'm going to tell you about that in a moment here. Okay. Shame is about feeling deeply about a person's sense of self apart from anybody else. So I can feel shame all by myself. I don't need to have anybody else. I can just feel shame by myself. I look in the mirror and my lips are too big, my hair's not right, my clothes don't lay right, and I feel shame just looking at me. And by the way, how many of you all can stand in the mirror naked and say, ooh, wee, I'm fine? What do? You start talking about, oh man, look at that adipose here, and look how they falling, and they should be standing straight up, and all of that. You know what I'm talking about? That's what we do. We can't say, I'm beautiful just the way I am. Okay? It's something I feel because I'm bad. This is how I feel because I'm bad. It's difficult to separate ourselves from the shame. Once you're locked in shame, I can't say, oh, that's feeling of shame, especially as you're beginning to identify it. You can't say, oh, that's shame. No, you're going to take it in as yourself, with you. And it separates me from others as my awareness of how I feel is virtually consumed by my internal sensations. Shame is what I'm feeling inside. Physiologically, there's this process going on in my body, and I feel it. I am suddenly consumed with how I feel. I'm not thinking about anybody else. I'm thinking about how I feel. And so it can be, I can experience shame without guilt. And so I'm going to, just for the sake of time, and since this ain't cooperating with me today, okay. I think it's really important to say shame is, again, I mentioned it's released in as a sin. Shame makes its way into our story at an early age. And shame is a relational process. Little child comes into the world, cute, I saw a little baby on the plane. I was goo-goo and gaga with him and with her, and smiling, and she was smiling back. It was really delightful. I love doing that. But the Shane's message starts as early as 15 months. And the message is, again, so we have no conscious memory of when shame is released into our story. And it happens in our relationship with our primary caregiver. And this is what happens. Remember, I'm born, the parts of my brains are undeveloped, and a child experiences the world through their senses. So mom comes to get the baby. It was after baby's crying, and after she is crying, then all of a sudden, she comes and her face is all distorted because she hit her toe. And so the baby sees mom, and she's sensing something's wrong with mom, and she has a sensation that happens in her body. This face that has been friendly and warm, it's not friendly and warm. So there's this emotional shift that takes place in the heart, in the life of this baby. And that baby translates it as something about me. I feel the world, and it's something about me. And so all of a sudden I'm crying, and I'm expecting mom to come as she typically does and care for me and all of that. But when she comes, she's got this mean look on her face. Even if she told me, baby, there's nothing wrong, you didn't do anything, my toe, I stubbed my toe. That doesn't mean anything to a child. All she knows is she experiences mom different than she typically has. And now she's left with these ball of feelings. She doesn't have the ability to sort it out. She can't say, that's mom stuff over there. All I'm doing is just crying because I need my diaper changed. None of that. She just experiences that as something's happened, and they take responsibility. This is what happened. The message is something's wrong with me. Just like this thing. Okay. All right. Okay. I want to talk about the difference between guilt versus shame. I'm only going to do that real quickly because just to really point out, guilt emerges as a result of something I've done that negatively affected someone else. It takes empathy for me to recognize that, and some insight that I've hurt somebody, and so I feel guilty, and I may have violated my own standards and my own values, and so I feel guilty about that because it has impacted you. Shame is a feeling having nothing to do with anybody else. It's just, this is how I feel about myself and about life. It doesn't have anything to do with interacting with anybody else. And the other thing is that once I recognize that I've done something wrong, I can just go to that person and say, hey, I'm sorry. I can see that I hurt you. There's been a rupture in the relationship, and I want to repair it. And so, I did whatever it is, I can apologize. But you got to understand what's happening at the physiological level. And this is so important, because I don't care how much you want me to eat right. I don't care how much you want me to obey the Lord. It does not matter. I don't care how much I want to believe that God is running after me. All of that. Why would he run after me? Who am I that he would run after me? The song said, if I were you, I would have turned my back. He cannot do that. But we judge him to be like us. He's not. Okay, so, all right, so you're going to fix that for me, right. So what happens is there's this process, it's coming. There it is. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide. Okay. Technology is a wonderful thing when it's working. Okay. Got to understand some things going on in the brain. So For years, we always said brain and the mind, they go together. You know, you can use the word interchangeably. We understand that that's not the case now. We understand that the brain houses the mind. And so the structure of the brain with all of its different domains, all of its different areas, they work together. And that really is our minds. There are several domains in the brain, and they all work together like a beautiful symphony. So the horn section and the string section and the other parts of they all work together, and the prefrontal cortex is the symphony master, okay? And that's what's going on. But there's a regulatory balance in our brains called the autonomic nervous system. You gotta bear with me while I tell you this, but it's gonna make sense. So the autonomic nervous system is composed of two parts, and it happens without our permission. It keeps my heart beating. I breathe. I don't have to think about it. I digest food. I don't have to think about it. And so that's okay. Okay. The sympathetic system is about going. It's about arousal. We were created to be creative. We were created to move, to get things done, right? But this is at birth. We're created to move and get. By the way, I couldn't understand how you all don't get up and just, oh, I'm fine. Yes, I'm fine. Oh, I'm fine. And the other song, I'm blessed. Oh my goodness. And the way they sound, I asked them last night, how long y'all been singing together? Oh, we just practiced an hour before we met. What? They sound amazing, right? And so we were created to move. That's what we were supposed to do. And that's part of the sympathetic system. The parasympathetic system is about slowing down that process. You know, there's a time when I should move and there's a time I should slow down. And what happens there too is, okay. Next slide. How about doing that? Next slide. Okay. These two systems also set the emotional tone of the mind of the person, right? And so if I got energy and, you know, I'm going and things are going well and, you know, I have this balance in my parasympathetic and sympathetic system, you know, things are going well. And it sets the emotional tone of my mind. The next slide, please. Okay, the prefrontal cortex, again, is the orchestra director. And it also helps us to deal with the energy that comes from these two systems working together. And what happens is my prefrontal cortex, and actually specifically the hippocampus that happens in addition to the prefrontal cortex, but in midbrain, the hippocampus needs someone to teach it how to, when is it time to slow down and when is it time to speed up? Example, I have all this energy, I'm 1 or 2 and I'm playing and I want to run in the path of danger, right? And so I need somebody to say, I need another brain to come alongside me and say, no, baby, you can't go out in the street, okay? I see this big, big animal coming toward me called a dog, and I'm scared to death. And so I stop. My parasympathetic system stops things. Boom, it stops. And I am frightened to death. And I go and run behind my mother's coattail. And what she does is she takes me and says, no, baby, that's a dog and this kind of dog. She takes my hand and she helps me to really understand this dog is safe. And she has come alongside me and helped me to understand a dog. So I need another brain. I need another brain to help me. I'm setting you up for tomorrow. I need another brain to come alongside me. Okay? It has to happen. Okay. And so It happens in the context of relationship. I cannot do this by myself. I learned this in relationship. What happens if my mother's system, her autonomic system, is out of balance? What if she's been hyper-aroused because she's been abused and she's always scanning the horizon for danger? And that's what we do, just automatically. Every man is a danger. Every woman who looks like my mother is a danger. And every woman with dark hair with glasses on, no, they're not cool. And so I'm always hyper-aroused. And so because I'm hyper-aroused and the energy, the emotions that hyper-arousal generates, I'm not containing it. I'm not managing it well, right? And so she can't train my brain. She can't train my prefrontal cortex to understand, oh, you're not in danger. And so I grow up, let's even think about this in terms of anxiety. For those of us who may struggle with anxiety, that may be something that's passed on generationally, part of the bend that we talked about last night. If nobody helped your mom to manage her anxiety, then you come along with your anxiety, and she doesn't know what to do with it. She has not had the lessons to manage anxiety, to maintain her own level of comfort, to emotional state. She can't help you. And so you grow up and you have anxiety like your mother. You tracking with me? Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. This is really very important, and this is the meat of what I'm going to be talking about. So, again, what happens is my mother comes, I'm going along, I'm having a good time, or I'm in school and I'm having a good time in school, and the teacher says that, and I like this teacher, but that teacher had a bad night at home or whatever. She comes to school and she says something really cruel to me. I'm going along and I'm actually riding a bicycle in terms of, this is a safe environment. I love school and everything is good. The teacher comes along and blows up my sense of safety by shaming me. And the very nature, I'm going along, remember, I'm going along, and then all of a sudden shame comes in the picture, and I am suddenly stopped in my track. And all of that, when I stop, there's this physiological feeling, this process that goes on. I don't know what to do with it. And by the way, where are the handouts? Yeah. I was thinking, yeah, you can hand them out, and then for our next session, to make sure. I thought about that last night. What happened to the handout? Okay. And so I'm going along, and all of a sudden, what I really needed at that moment was to be in a tank. And so when the explosion goes off, I'm well insulated, but this environment has proved that I don't need a tank, and I'm on my bicycle, and then this explosion happens, and I'm left with this huge feeling, and now I don't know what to do with the feelings, right? And we all have what is called a window of tolerance. I'm going along, and car breaks down. Okay, that's in my window of tolerance. It's, it is what it is. I just have to get it fixed and have a flat tire. It is what it is. And then I come home and I find out that my daughter got suspended from school. It's still within my window of tolerance, but then I come home and my husband says that he comes home and he says he got fired from his job. That really tests the upper limits of my window of tolerance. And now I am beyond my window of tolerance. My feelings are way bigger than I can contain. And so I am left with this big feeling and have no place to put them. My teacher has shamed me. I'm on my bicycle. She shamed me, and these huge feelings happen. This physiological shift has taken place. I have these huge feelings, and unless I've had some resilience, and resilience comes along with someone coming alongside me and saying, you're going to be okay. This is not the end of the world. I don't know what's going on with your teacher, but it's not the end of the world, and helps me to manage my big feelings. I'm left out here with these huge feelings, and shame is a remarkably huge feeling. I'm left out here feeling this stuff, right? And so what happens is there's this disintegration that happens. And so my director, my orchestra director, my prefrontal cortex is now suspended. It's now, the horns over here playing the melody, a couple of refrains behind, and the string section are over here. So there's this disintegration. And let me tell you what it looks like. Instead of being able to be flexible and adaptable, I now am, I feel chaos. Anybody ever feel chaos? I don't even know what to feel. I just feel all of this chaos. And things don't make sense. I can't think. I can't, don't give me something to do in that process, because I'm not going to be able to use the domain of my mind that helps me to memorize things and to hold on to memories. None of that is working, because all of this has happened. You know, my mind is disintegrated. It's falling apart. And more importantly, I get disconnected from my body. So there's this internal disintegration and this physical integration. I get disconnected from my mind, but more importantly, I also get disconnected from others. And this is what shame does. And I just explained to you what happens in terms of disintegration. And so this is the other point about this disintegration. When I get disintegrated, because I don't have all portions of my mind functioning well, I am stuck in the present, and I may even be awash with memories from the past. And so now my past looks like my present. And so I'm living like my past is the present. Important to understand. And I can only envision a future based on my past. It takes creativity to be able to see a different future. And now I am awash in these feelings with my mind not working together. And I can't visualize. It takes creation to visualize a new future. And so I've been, I work with a woman who was raped 5 times. And somebody said, now how did she get raped 5 times? And she had, I remember this was years ago, bless her heart, a really nice lady, but she, you know, her picker was broken. She chose the same kind of man. And so 5 different men raped her. And you think, how in the world did that happen? Well, again, that's all she could envision. Because of her shame and because of her trauma, that's all she could envision was the same kind of experience happening over and over again. And we want to live something different, but the truth is we cannot. And there's physiological reasons why we cannot. We just cannot. We're awash, our brains are not working, our minds are not working to really support a different future. And so we are awash with all of this stuff. There's no room for somebody to come and say, oh, there's something else you can do. You can really have joy in life. No, I can't. This is all I know. This is all I got. And, you know, every woman really has done the same thing. She's disappointed me, right? That's what we get. You with me? Okay. I want to say really the truth. We all have some form of disintegration in our stories. And so is the trauma that underlies it. There's always trauma associated with that disintegration. And we all have it. And maybe you don't have an abuse part of your story. Maybe you don't have neglect part of your story, but there's something in your experience. I can say that emphatically because sin has released shame. And it impacts all of us, not some of us, and maybe some of us have more shame than others, but it still is doing its dirty work. Okay. This is the internal effects. So I had this experience, the teacher has said whatever, my mind disintegrates, and then what I do is I turn inward. I start asking, wow, what happened? What did I do? I start turning inward. I now am disconnected from my relationship with my teacher. Now, I like this teacher, but now there's this isolation that I experience in relationship. And then I feel bad. Remember, I talked about the self-perpetuating nature of shame. That's what happens internally to me. I feel bad because I feel shame, but I'm isolated. I have turned inward. There is no outward focus. There is no other focus. I have turned inward. I literally am turned inward. But remember, my brain, my mind has disintegrated. They're not. The pieces are not working well together. The horns over there playing 2 measures behind the string part of it's just a hot mess. There's chaos or rigidity that occurs. But this is the important part, the effects of shame on relationship. This is what I want you to understand. What we do is we hide. Because if you really knew the real me, then you won't like me. That's our fear, that if you really knew me, if you really knew who I really was, then you would not like me. And that's way, way, way too scary. So I'm going to hide. And so you ask me, I'm fine. Oh, I'm fine. Yeah, it's all good. I'm fine. But I'm not. And then what we do is pull away. It's too scary to be close, so I pull away. And, you know, I get so tickled how we do the religious pull away, you know. Well, you know, she's not eating right, so I'm going to let her go. She let her kids do this thing, so I'm going to let her go. And I really don't trust her around my husband because I heard she had a past, so I'm just going to pull away. It had nothing to do with that woman. It's about me protecting myself. That's what shame causes us to do, to hide, to pull away, and our narrative is changed. What do I mean by that? Someone said to me, somebody came up after the session last night and said, you know, we all have a story to tell, and we need to tell our story. I certainly agree with that, but I want to challenge our stories. Because when shame is inserted, we begin telling shame story. I'm not enough. You're absolutely right. Don't ask me. You want me to do what, Sue, to help you do what? You know you got it going on. You do this organization thing so much better than I do. What do you mean you want me to? I can't do it. It's too much. Can't. Nope. And who am I? I can't sing the way what's your name? Jan. I can't sing. Jan does a mean low alto. I can't sing like that. What? You know, and you want me to get up? I can't do it. And so I'm going to hide. I'm going to pull away. And the narrative is, remember, something's wrong with me. And the story is that I will never measure up. So I mentioned to you about, being pregnant and having this baby. So I joined the church. Eric was 16. I was 14. Eric was 6 weeks old. I'm the only one in my family in the church. And eventually my parents came in, my mom first and then my dad. And I was 28, Eric was 14. And we literally grew up together, needless to say. But I remember a conversation I had with my dad. I finished school and hit that really serious bout of depression, emerged from that. But my dad said, you know, you're damaged goods, you're never going to get married. And I said, oh, okay. I mean, that makes sense. Okay. So, all right. And so Eric is very smart, and I thought, okay, well, what I'll do is I'll just, work on my degree, get my master's, get my PhD, and then I'll just follow Eric around. Eric at that time wanted to be a dentist, so I'll follow him around and be the doting grandmother. So it's cool. But let me back up first. So at 18, Eric is 4. I wanted to go to be a nurse. I wanted to be a nurse because when I went into labor, my mother dropped me off at the hospital, and I was in labor for 20 hours by myself. And there was a nurse who stayed with me for 8 hours. You know, they were working 8-hour shifts. And so when she came in on day shift, she stayed with me. Nobody was there. I didn't have a coach, didn't have anybody. So she stayed with me. She came in on first shift. I came in at 1 o'clock in the morning. She came in first shift, and then I had Eric at 7:30 in the evening. But she stayed with me, bless her heart. Don't remember what she looked like. She had green scrubs and pretty pearly white shoes. That's what I remember. And so, that was. I want to be like her. I became obsessed with having clean white shoes. Had no idea what the connection was. I mean, I was obsessed about having white shoes. You know, all my evaluations. Beverly is a very neat nurse. And when I worked nights, I worked in psych. When I worked nights, all my colleagues who were pretty had their faces made up and they were all together, but their shoes were dirty. You cannot do that. So you leave these shoes here. Once I finish my work tonight, I will polish your shoes. And they saw me on the schedule. Oh, Jackson's on the schedule. We're going to have clean white shoes the whole week she's here. And so that's what I did. So when I was 18, I wanted to go to Oakwood. And my mom said, no, that's too far away from home because I want Eric. I was responsible for Eric. I took care of him other than when I was in school. And so I had to take care of him. That's too far away. I got a scholarship to go to school in Southern Ohio. And I could get home frequently, and Eric called me mommy, he called her granny, and so he understood that I was his mother, so there was some sense of a layer here. But the reason why I wanted to go to Oakwood was because if I went to Oakwood and met a pastor, then I would be somebody. You see, I could get married, and then I would be somebody. And people would think I got it going on because I'm married to a pastor. I promise you, I was so grateful that God hedged up the way. Whew, I'm so grateful because y'all wouldn't have been part of a dysfunctional church while I'm trying to get my needs met in this very, very dysfunctional way. But that's what shame was. That was the story I was telling myself. And so when my dad said at 28, you know, you're not going to get married, you know, that's true. And so I'm not going to, there was never, I was like there. I mean, the shame story is, hey, I'm broken. You know, what kind of young person would have a baby? Who would get pregnant at 13? Who would do that? Yeah, you're right. I am this terrible person. And so I pulled in for myself, and I did my schoolwork and everything, and you know, did a good job on the job. But that's where I was, and that was my shame story. And so if you had asked me, I would have said, "Oh yeah, I'm not going to get married." How come? Well, because my father said I wasn't going to get married, so that's why I'm not going to get married. And I believed his shame story, and I lived my life based on that. The narrative changed. I get abused. Anybody can do with my body whatever they want to do. The narrative has changed. And I start living shame story. You start living shame story. Your kids are messed up, and I don't care how much you beat them and try to get them to act right. I don't care how much you try to control them. They're not going along with the program, and you feel bad about that. And again, remember the self-perpetuating nature of shame. You feel bad because you feel bad, and you got a hot mess. I'm a poor mother. I'm a pitiful mother. That's the shame story. My narrative has changed. You with me? And I hope you're thinking about how your narrative changed. Shame shows up in the way we think about ourselves, how we feel about ourselves, and the way we treat ourselves. Now, let me ask another hard question. How many of you all have, it's 10:03. I'm so sorry. Okay. So is it okay if I just finish this? Okay, and then, okay. Can I be kind of up front in the line since I'm 3 hours off? No. I'm kind of serious. No. But if you let me up front, I'm going. how do you do this? How many of you have eaten something and you know you're going to have a stomach ache, but you eat it anyway? You know that what you're doing is not serving you well, but you keep doing it. And you know you shouldn't be putting yourself down, looking in the mirror and thinking, come on. Or somebody will come and say something nice to you, and you'll kill it. No, that's not true. I don't really look my hair's not. No, forget that. No, I'm a hot mess. No, you think this old dress looks good? Yeah. How we feel about ourselves, what we think about ourselves, how we treat ourselves, shame has its hand all over our lives. And then the biblical solution. So I got to give you the good news real quick. Let me rush through this real quick. This is what I want you to understand. It is impossible for you to recover from shame by yourself. It is impossible. It is physiologically impossible. If you got low blood sugar, it is physiologically impossible for you to think your way out of getting a stable blood sugar. It's impossible for you to say, I'm going to pray my way out of this blood sugar. It is impossible. There has to be an intervention that happens. It is necessary for someone to see us, to come alongside us and help us to regulate our feelings. Remember that window of tolerance. I'm outside of my window of tolerance. My orchestra is not playing together. I am just chaos, or I'm very rigid in my responses. I need somebody to come alongside me who will see me. And in the seeing of who I am or where I am soothed in being seen. And so this idea of me hiding, I can tell y'all my dirt. Why? Because I'm washed, I'm sanctified, I'm justified in Jesus. And what you think about me is really irrelevant because I know who I am. Amen. And so I can tell you, yeah, I haven't been talking to God for the last couple of weeks. Nope, no, I haven't been talking to him. I just, been in this shame cycle myself. That's really true, by the way. It's like, what? I'm preparing for retreats and we're not talking. I'm lost in this shame cycle, cutting my community off and everything. I know this stuff. I got this head knowledge, but I can't do it. And so what happens is we have got to, the solution, my mind is disintegrated. I need another brain to come alongside me that sees me. I got to tell my story. I had to call my community and say, I haven't been talking to you all because I've been locked in shame, lost in shame. Well, we knew that. So glad you could reach out and say that. We knew you were gone, and we were waiting. We tried, they called me, and I wasn't talking to them. I have 2 women in my community. We tried to call just to touch base, and we talked about the weather. And so I had to tell my story, and the story was the truth. And then I had to be vulnerable and say, I really have been lost. I had to tell the truth. We were made to be vulnerable. It's not a matter of, should I be? You were made to be vulnerable. It's just a matter of how vulnerable do you want to be? We were made to be vulnerable. And so the solution to the isolation is to be a part of community. And if you don't have community, we're going to talk about that on Sunday. What does that look like? You cannot be by yourself. It's impossible to be by yourself. The body screams, no cell can live on its own without another cell. The cell will shrivel up and die. Your body teaches you that. You have to be a part of community. And then your narrative was changed because of shame, then you have to tell God's narrative. And let me tell you what God's narrative is. And I already talked about the resistance, but I just want to end with these pictures. This is a shame story. Trauma happened to me. Something has happened to me. And yeah, I know the cross. And, I know Jesus came and he died for me. But my story is more of the same. I can only bring my past to my future. That's it. That's shame's story. This is God's story. God took this mess whatever it is, he took it. Because he's still creating, he takes this mess and he creates something beautiful out of it. And he wants me to be partakers of that beauty. Then I got hope, I got restoration, I can envision a different story. And then you mean I'm not damaged goods? You mean I can get married? So when this man comes along at 34, now that was 28, my dad told me that. 34, David came along, and nice guy. He's just the nicest man. And it was like, we're going to be great friends. And when he started looking Google-eyed, I was like, what? A white man, Google-eyed? What? Second day, God said, this is the one I have for you. No, God. I want a dark-skinned, chunky black man. Imagine. A skinny white man, what? That's the good news. That's the good news I leave you with. And again, sorry, we have to have some time. Did you get a little drop from the fire hose this morning? Just a little drop? Okay. And I want to pray. I want to pray right now. And then this afternoon, we're going to talk about shame. My next 11:30. I'm going to talk about trauma, but just a little bit. I'm going to open it up. Is that okay? Okay, just open it up. Any questions you may have, but I want to pray. And can I pray for the breakfast? Yes. Okay, all right. Father, I thank you so much we are tired of telling shame story. We want to tell the truth about you, who you are. The truth is, when we tell shame story, we are in collusion with the enemy. We're helping him to say who you are. We know that that's not true. We say we're people of the book. But the truth is, Lord, when we line up with him, we're telling his story. We don't want to do that anymore. And so in the name of Jesus, just one word from this session today, may it jolt us into wanting to more what you have for us. And hear the call, come on up here, baby girl, sit on my lap. I know you. There's nothing you can do, nothing, no shame, nothing that song said, nothing. I love you. And I want you to tell my story. And my story is there's a future and a hope. As we are now about to partake of food, I pray that the food may nourish and strengthen us, and may we not eat one bite more than we need. Thank you so much. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen.